Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. I am Jake Moore. I'm the Global Cybersecurity Advisor here at ESET, and we're just opening the doors for everyone to jump on in to this very interesting webinar we've got here with Rob Shapland. As the numbers increase, I hope you're all ready to listen to what we have for you today. So, before I hand it over to the other two gentlemen that we have here today, I just want to mention Rob Shapland, okay? Now, it says on his website that he's an ethical hacker. But what I also love about Rob, he's a storyteller, okay? This guy knows how to tell a story, and you are here today to listen to a webinar called How to Steal a Vaccine, which of course is extremely interesting. And Rob has 10 years experience, okay, of conducting pen tests for hundreds of organizations. But what I really like about what I read about him is he specializes in simulating advanced cyber attacks, combining technical attacks and his use of social engineering, including, and I quote, dressing up. Now, I was kind of hoping, Rob, you'd be here today dressed up as one of your amazing characters in one of your pen tests, but you've come as yourself, but hey, that's fantastic. So maybe you are going to dress up, I don't know. Hey, but right, before we go into what Rob has for us today, I'm just going to go through the agenda. We don't really need any housekeeping now, we're all at home, but hopefully you know where the fire exits are. But I'm going to hand it over to Nathan Holmes in a mo. He is our account team lead, and he's going to give you that little introduction, if you need it, to what ESET is and what ESET offers. And then we're going to go over to Rob, who is, yes, the head of cyber innovation at Phalanx Cyber, with his talk, How to Steal a Vaccine. And then once he's done, it's going to come back to me to offer any questions that you've asked throughout the way. So if you do have any questions with what Rob's been talking about this story or about his career, then throw them into the chat or the question box. I'll find them and I'll throw them out at him at the end. And if you like what you've seen today, then please look out for more of these events coming up. We have a few lined up, no exact dates yet, but we will be sure to be sending those out to you via email in the future, so look out for those. So I hope you're all sitting comfortably. I'm going to send you over to Nathan Holmes and enjoy the next hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Hi, everyone. As Jake alluded to, I'm Nathan Holmes, one of the kind of channel sales managers here at ESET. Been here for 4 years, selling the solution and all of this. And I guess before we kind of listen to the interesting stuff, I have to give you the who's who is who we are as ESET. Now, I appreciate that we've probably got a wide range of attendees today, and therefore a wide range of levels of knowledge about ESET. So I'll try and keep this as relevant and as succinct as possible for everyone. So some of the highlights: we're a digital security company. Shock horror, cyber war, kind of alluded to with what the webinar series is called. We used to just be antivirus, then anti-malware, but now more so digital security, which not only reflects the expansion of attack vectors, but also attack surfaces as we collectively embrace all good things that internet-based e-commerce has brought to our global economy. 30 years in the industry, based out of Slovakia, one of the largest cybersecurity vendors coming out of Europe, sort of 4th or 5th globally within the presence, which a lot of people don't know, especially within the UK marketplace, but a large presence across Eastern Europe and things like that. Privately owned, meaning we have the ability to focus on creating excellent solutions and not shareholder returns. Our founders of our product are still integral to the development and the direction that we go as a company, meaning that they believe in the development and R&D of our product rather than anything else. So as mentioned, largest European-based IT security company. We're in over 200 countries worldwide with 18 R&D centers. I think that's gone up actually. Only recently I was having a conversation with one of the pre-sales guys, but it just showcases how much we believe in the development of our security rather than anything else, because the majority of our staff and our resource is dedicated to the R&D facet, which, interesting, 40%, I think, across that sort of range of things. We are also have around 2.5 billion users of our software. Now, that's a big statistic, but if you're using Google Chrome or the Google App Store, you're actually a user of ESET because we're in the cleanup solutions for both of those tools. Just a nice high-level statistic that I like throwing out. Makes me seem like I can talk about kind of, or we can position ESET in a slightly better way. Obviously, wide portfolio of protection solutions from consumer all the way to large enterprise, from Granny to Google. Another nice little thing that you can use. The interesting thing is what many people are probably less aware of when it comes to ESET is our wider connections with intelligence agencies around the globe. We provide threat intelligence to and work closely with organizations such as GCHQ, FBI, CIA, Interpol, Europol, other acronyms that are, available within that space. But it's important that we give our kind of intelligence to these organizations so that activities of organized criminal gangs and malicious nation states can be fed into these, as we're finding it on almost a daily basis, the information that's out there in the marketplace. A great example of this is the conflict in Ukraine. Being a Slovakian-based company, as you can imagine, we're on the leading edge of finding a lot of stuff that's being distributed out there at the moment through the conflict. So we're perfectly suited, not only geographically, but also within our sector to kind of lead the conversation within those sectors. I would prefer to be able to call us that we're actually a threat intelligence-based companies as well as digital security, because it's the intelligence that helps us create solutions and services to stay ahead of these threats and help protect individuals and organizations from malicious and damaging activities. Threat reports and threat intel feeds are becoming more and more important to a wider range of organizations directly, and this is an area of expertise ESET is also able to offer. Of course, there are practical solutions that ESET provide. Our services solutions and products have evolved over time to become multi-layered to combat, the proliferation of attack vectors exploited by increasingly sophisticated cyber criminals. So these threat reports and intel feeds are yet another layer of defense as part of a wider portfolio of solutions. It's important that they are delivered by experts in the area. And, as I said, ESET, we believe that we are just that. So the Art of Cyber War webinar series, where does it all fit? Why Rob's talk, I hear you ask. It's obviously very loud, as you're all on mute, theoretically ask. To answer those questions, I guess I'll just say this, is that we believe that by understanding how certain breaches occurred, we hope to help you understand how to prevent such occurrences in the future and to add a further layer of security to your defenses, which is knowledge. It could be argued that knowing more is as important as deploying the right solutions to protect you from them. And that's what the Art of Cyber War is trying to address within these series. I obviously like the sound of my own voice at the best of times. However, I think that's probably about as relevant as it goes. So, Rob, this is where I dutifully hand it over to you. I'm very interested to hear all of this. So thank you very much.
Cool, thanks very much. Well, good afternoon where I am, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon. It's really nice to be on the call with you today. As Nathan and Jake said, my kind of specialty is storytelling. So I'm an ethical hacker or a penetration tester, but I like to do these sort of cybersecurity webinars and advice by kind of scaring people a little bit and telling them stories of what I've done and how easy it can be to break into companies. So this one is called How to Steal a Vaccine, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk you through how I planned and executed a simulated criminal attack against a pharmaceutical company to get into their head office, into their branch office as well, break in and steal the design for a vaccine they had developed. So quick intro to me. My name's Rob. I work for a company called Phalanx Cyber, based in the UK, but we work with companies worldwide, focused on offensive and defensive security. I basically specialize in these really advanced simulated criminal attacks called red teaming, where we combine technical cyber attacks with what's called social engineering or physical intrusion of buildings. So that is my kind of niche within this industry, and it's also my hobby, is dressing up in different outfits and trying to get my way into a company's office by pretending to be a cleaner, perhaps an employee, a COVID-19 inspector from a local authority, whatever I think will work. And then once I'm inside, I'll either sit down with a laptop and try and hack into the network from there, or I'll plug in a device that gives me remote access to that network, and then I'll leave the building and then connect through that device. And what that does is it bypasses most of the cybersecurity defenses that are in place. It bypasses the firewalls and the two-factor authentication and all the things that companies put in place simply by me kind of walking into the office and plugging in. It's also really, really good fun. I absolutely love doing it. When I'm not doing either of those things, I do a lot of training for companies, so trying to bring that offensive experience into the cybersecurity training to make it a bit more interesting. And then I do quite a bit of media work for BBC, ITV, Sky News in UK and other European countries as well. So, as I said, this is going to be a story. So I'm going to tell you how I planned and executed this attack against a pharmaceutical company. So how it works basically is I get contacted by companies who want to test their cyber and physical security defenses for a particular reason. So it might be that they have particular concerns about something. So this company had finished the development of this vaccine. I'm not going to say what it was exactly, but anyway, they'd finished development of this vaccine and they wanted us to test their defenses before they went public with the information on who they were and the fact they'd finished this vaccine. Because as soon as they did, they knew they'd be a huge target for criminals. So my goal was to get access to the set of files that formed the design of this vaccine and then extract them from the network onto my encrypted laptop without being caught. So that was the goal. So whenever we've got something like this happening, the first stage is always planning. So preparing as much as we can, finding out as much information about the company we're targeting. So we want to know, where are the weak points? How can we break in? Is there some out-of-date software that we could exploit and get in that way? Could we use an email phishing attack? Could we break into one of their buildings? So we start to think about, okay, how could we break into this organization? And the first part of that is called OSINT, or Open Source Intelligence Gathering. That is basically just a posh term for research on the internet. So I'm looking for any information on the internet that could be helpful to me in breaking into the company that I'm targeting. Now, this company had 15 offices around the UK, one head office, and then 14 kind of smaller administration offices in various different towns. They had their main websites. They had 25 internet-facing computers, so 25 IP addresses facing the internet. They used Office 365 for their remote email. They also had quite a number of employees listed on their LinkedIn page. And this allowed me to identify a number of staff email addresses that I could potentially use, because simply by looking on LinkedIn, I can see who works for the company, and then I can work out their email address because I've got who they are and where they work. So it's not going to be incredibly difficult for me to work out what their work email address is from there. I also spend quite a bit of time on the corporate social media pages. So if the company has an Instagram profile, a Twitter page, a Facebook page, I will look at those and see whether there's anything interesting on those pages. So perhaps photographs from inside the building, photographs of staff wearing identity badges that I might then be able to use to create a copy of their badge. Maybe I could then pretend to be an employee. If I've got time, I'll even start researching individual employees' social media profiles. So I'll take their names from LinkedIn. I'll then go to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, scroll through their photos and messages and see if they're talking about anything to do with work. See if they post a photo of them wearing their uniform or their badge or whatever it is at that company. So lots of interesting information is gathered through this OSINT exercise. Now, the company had told me that the file, the sort of zip file that contained the vaccine design, was stored on a computer in their head office that was not connected to the internet. So they were really, really keen on me trying to break into their offices, physically break in order to get onto their internal computer network and then steal the file from there. So that was going to be the main plan. However, I assessed the security of the head office and it looked really, really good. So pharmaceutical head offices tend to be very, very good like this. So there was high fences with razor wire on top. There were CCTV cameras all around. We had I could see security patrols. This is by using Google Maps and the Street View mode. I could see all these things. Yeah, security patrols with dogs. There was a front gate with, it looked like it had like an entranceway where anyone would have to come in and then they get stopped there before they got any further. And there were no back entrances. So I thought this is going to be a really difficult target. But I know from previous experience of breaking into companies, you don't normally need to go for the really secure head office. What you can do is you can target one of the smaller offices, get in there, and because all the offices are interconnected on that internal network for that company, usually by being in the small office, you can access computers in the head office. So that was my plan, was going to be to see if I could break into a small office and then use the connection I had in there to get across to the more secure head office without physically needing to break into this head office. So a few different things I wanted to do. So one of them, and I've done this a few times for companies, especially during the lockdown period, is trying to find people's home addresses and then use that as a method of breaking into their home Wi-Fi and then stealing the passwords they use on their computer network. The passwords they use to connect into the corporate network by stealing them by being on the same home Wi-Fi network as them. The idea being, if I can steal a password, I can then use that when I break into the office. So rather than having to break into the office and then do some hacking, I can literally break into their office, sit down either at one of their computers or at my computer and log in as one of their actual users. And one of the ways I could do that would be to drive to one of their employees' home addresses and then steal their passwords from there. So this is what I tried to do. So I found one of their employees was a user of a running app called Strava, which is very popular. You may have heard of it if you're into running or cycling. And I found them on there. Their profile wasn't set to be secure, so I could see all their runs. And I started to sort of work out where most of their runs were starting and ending, and working out that was probably their home address. So in this image here, the green dot was their home address. So I was able to then drive there in a van, sit outside and try to hack into their Wi-Fi network. The idea being, if I can get into their home Wi-Fi network, I can then monitor everything they're doing, including passwords they're sending. So when they do connect to the work network, I can steal that and have their password. However, in order to do that, you need to hack into their home Wi-Fi system, which involves guessing the password for that. And that entirely depends on the length of that password. And in this case, the person I targeted, the password they were using, ended up being far too long for me to be able to break it. So that avenue was dead. I couldn't actually use that, but I thought I'd show you it as an example of the stuff that you can do now people are working from home. So I still want to have a password when I get to the office. I don't really like breaking into an office and then plugging my laptop in and having to do like hacking with no usernames and passwords. It's much easier if I have a password of someone that works for that company, because then I can just log in as them. And if they have access to the vaccine design I need, then I might only have to be there 10 minutes. I can just log in as them, find the file and extract it off the network. So that was my goal. So I decided instead to do a phishing attack on them to steal a password. So that was going to be my plan for how I was going to do that. I was then going to target that small admin office that I mentioned to try and break in there, and then hopefully be able to connect across to the head office network and steal the vaccine design from there. So, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, there were 15 offices of this company around the UK. One of those was the head office, 14 other offices. So I started looking on Google Maps and Street View to identify the one that I thought would be the least secure, the easiest one to break into. And I found one just located on a street between some shops. So a main shopping street, lots of people coming and going, lots of people walking past. And it was just between two shops. The good thing about that is it couldn't have fences, it couldn't have high security and security patrols and things like that. So it should be relatively easy for me to just turn up at this building. And what I can do in advance, and what I do every single time I'm going to break into a building, is do what we call an on-site reconnaissance, a recce. So go there in person a week or two before we're going to break in, just to learn as much as we can about the building. Because yes, we can get information from Google Maps and Street View, but it's not necessarily up to date, and it might be missing things. So it's better for us to go there in person. So a bit like you see in the movies when there's police doing a stakeout and they're sat in a van and they're eating some donuts and they're just watching for when the criminal comes out. It's a little bit like that, except I'm observing a building and finding out as much as possible about it. So basic things I want to find out: where are the entrances and exits? So apart from, obviously, there'll be a front entrance, is there a back entrance where I can sneak past the receptionist? Is there an underground entrance where people come in after they park their car or after they park their bike up? At the front entrance, what does the security look like? So are there security guards or just receptionists? Are there security barriers? If so, what sort of barriers are they? So are they the door ones like that, which you can just about tailgate behind someone through? Or are they turnstiles? Or is it an airlock system? So it all depends. What I do next is going to depend on what that security looks like. What do people wear to work? So is it suit and tie? Is it casual clothes? Is it some sort of uniform? Do they have an ID badge? If they do, what does that badge look like? And I'll try and take a photograph of someone wearing their ID badge during the reconnaissance, so I can then create a copy of it if I want to pretend to be an employee. So I have a machine in my office that can print out a badge and a lanyard in any style and design that I need. So I can kind of copy the design they use, put my face on it instead, print it out, and I've got a very valid looking identity badge for the day. Even better, if I need to get through security barriers, I have a device called an RFID cloner, which essentially acts like a card reader. So if I walk past someone holding my device, I get within about half a meter of them, I can scan their ID badge, and my machine will then store that signal. I can then transfer it onto the badge that I've created. So that badge that I made to look like their ID badge will be a valid RFID badge. It just had no signal on it. But now I can transfer that from the device onto the badge. Now the badge works. So you imagine turning up at a big corporate head office, a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people working there. I'm wearing a suit and tie. I'm acting like I belong there. I've got a badge with my face on. It's got the right design. I get to the security barriers. I swipe in. It works. It unlocks the doors. No one's going to stop me at that point. No one knows. Even the security guards can't know everyone in an office of that size. So that's kind of an ideal scenario, and that works brilliantly in large corporate head office where they don't have encrypted badges. Encrypted badges will stop that, but lots of them aren't at the moment. But the office I was targeting, this small branch office, about 20 people were working there. So from observing the number of people coming and going, around 20 people working there. Now that makes it very difficult, because if I turn up at that office and sit down and pretend I've always worked there, people are going to look over at me and go, well, who's that guy? I've never seen him before in my life. He's got a badge on, but I've never seen him before. So that's not going to work very well, right? So in that case, when you need to break into an office where there's only a small number of people, you need to come up with another idea. And we call this the pretext. What we're going to dress up as, how we're going to act. And that pretext needs to match up with what we need to do when we're inside. So in this scenario, I need to get onto their computer network because I've got to access this file from their network. So I can't really dress up as a cleaner, because if a cleaner comes in and then starts cleaning and then sits down at a desk and gets their laptop out and starts working, it looks really suspicious. So I need to come up with an idea of someone I can dress up as that could legitimately ask for access to the computer network. So what I decided to do was dress up as a British Telecoms or BT engineer, because in the UK, they're everywhere. You see BT engineers all over the place. And they wear a high-vis jacket with the BT logo on the back. And ironically, when you wear a high-vis jacket, for some reason, people don't see you anymore. It's just one of those curious things. So I put my high-vis jacket with the BT logo that I printed onto the back. I had a bag full of tools and cables. I made some paperwork with the BT logo on it, and then some information like a work reference number and a contact name and all sorts of stuff, so it looked legitimate, and carried that on a clipboard. And then finally, I created an ID badge for BT as well, for an engineer. And I was able to actually get the real design of BT's badges by doing more social media research. So I went onto LinkedIn, searched for BT engineers, scrolled through the list of engineers. Then from there, I was looking for anyone with a slightly strange name, because what I want to do is look them up on Instagram. And if their name's John Smith, there's going to be millions of them, so I'm not going to be able to find that. So I look for people with slightly strange names. Found a few on Instagram. What I'm going to do is I'm looking for the ones that don't have private accounts, the ones that have open profiles. Scroll through, looking if they posted any photographs of them when they're at work. And after a while, I found an engineer, a photo of an engineer, and he was wearing his full uniform and he was holding his badge right up to the camera. And the caption said something like, end of my first week of BT, tired, but really enjoyed it. Something like that. Anyway, that's kind of irrelevant, because the relevant thing was he had his badge right up to the camera. So I was able to zoom in on that, create a copy of it, cut his face off, print my face onto it. And now I've got an ID badge that looks exactly like BT. So I've got the right clothes on, I've got some equipment, I've got the badge. So now all I've got to do is act like a BT engineer. So got my outfit ready to go. But as I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure that I've got a username and password ready to go when I get there. So I'm going to do a phishing attack against some of their employees to try and steal a password. Now, the idea behind the phishing attack would be that I'd email 2 or 3 employees, 5 employees, I think it was, in the company, trying to convince them that I was from their own internal IT department and that I needed to, I was trying to convince them they'd switched over to a new version of Office 365, so a new website address for their Office 365 email. And by doing so, hopefully I could convince them to click on a link, open up a fake version of Office 365, and they put their username and password in. Now, in order to make this email look legitimate and make it more likely they click on it, I emailed someone that worked in their HR team. So from a random email address, I emailed them and said, hi, I'm moving to the area next week. I wondered if you had any jobs available. Now they replied and they just sent me a link to their job vacancies page. Doesn't matter what I emailed them. The whole reason to do that was so that then I could see the format of their emails. So when they replied, I got the signature that they use at the bottom of their email, and I got the font that they use and the color and everything like that. So now I was able to customize the email using that information that I'd stolen from that original email. So I send an email to 5 selected people. Now I've chosen these people on purpose. I don't want anyone that works in IT, but I do want people that have authority, so are likely to have access to many things on the computer network. So I pick normally high-level directors of the company and send this phishing attack to them. And the phishing attack said, hi, we're switching over to a new version of Microsoft Outlook 365 next week, on your website address, sorry. Please could you check your username and password work on the following link? And there was a link below, and the link looked almost identical to their existing one. There was just a dash between their name, the company name, dash office365.com. So it looks really, really good. And then when they click on that link, it goes through to the same domain, the same website address, because I bought that website address ready to go. And then below the address bar, it looks identical to their current Office 365 page. It doesn't raise any suspicion at that point. And of those 5 people, very quickly, 2 of them clicked on that link and put their username and password in. And I did this the day before I was going to be breaking into the office. So I've got these 2 username and passwords ready to go. So now I'm feeling quite confident. If I can get in the building, I can use these to get onto the computer network and hopefully steal this vaccine design. So I put on my BT outfit that I talked about: high-vis jacket, bag of cables, ID badge, and the clipboard. Now, when you come in off the street into this office that I'm targeting, on the left is a kind of foyer area, waiting area with a table, sofa, magazines, things like that. Straight ahead is a lift that goes up to their top floor, where their office space is. And then on the right is the reception desk, and there was one receptionist sitting behind there. So I go straight up to her, dressed as the BT person, and say, hi, I'm here from BT. We've had a call from your head office asking us to come in and try and diagnose a network issue. Apparently they've been trying to connect to you all morning, but they haven't managed to. They're having problems, and they think it might be a problem with the BT lines. Do you mind if I just go upstairs, plug in? Shouldn't take me any more than about half an hour to do so. Now my hope was that the receptionist would just let me in. You know, sometimes that happens. It's just as easy as that. They just say, oh yeah, off you go, and that's it. But she didn't. She had a list of visitors that were booked in for that day, and of course I wasn't on that list. So she looked down at it and said, oh, I'm really sorry, I haven't got anything booked in for you today. I'm going to need to speak to someone at head office to verify. Were you given a name? Now, I had written down a name on my sheet, my clipboard, of a name of a guy that worked in their IT team, a man called Adam. Now, I picked Adam on purpose because I knew he was out of the office that day. And the reason I knew he was out of the office that day is because he put it on his Facebook page. So on the morning of the test, I'd looked at his Facebook profile, and even though I wasn't friends with him, I could still see status updates and things because he hadn't configured it properly. Which isn't very good for an IT guy. And on the morning of the test, he had put up a post saying that he was at Gatwick Airport. I can't remember where he was flying to, but he was on a flight. And that was about 3 hours beforehand. So he'd been at the airport 3 hours before. So I thought, okay, he's going to be on his flight now, so he won't be contactable. So if I give that name to the receptionist, if she asks for it, when she tries to get hold of him, she won't be able to. And maybe if I just keep pressurizing her, maybe she'll let me in. So she phones Adam, obviously can't get hold of him. It goes through to voicemail. She leaves a message. And meanwhile, I'm sort of looking at my watch and saying, oh, I've got other appointments to get to and things, hoping that will convince her to just go, oh, go on then. But it doesn't. She says, look, I'm really sorry, I can't get hold of Adam. I've left a voicemail message for him, but I can't let you in until I've spoken to him. The only problem is I've got loads of other phone calls to be making myself. So could you take his phone number? And she gave me a sheet of paper with his phone number on it. And then she gave me her phone number, another piece of paper, and said, could you phone him up? If you manage to get through to him, put him through to me, and I'll check it's all right for you to come in. So I took these 2 phone numbers and went out of the office. And I thought about it for a minute and thought, okay, I don't think she'll know Adam's voice. So he works in the head office. She's in one of the smaller offices. The head office has hundreds of people working there. I don't think she'll know his voice. So if I phone up my office and ask one of the guys working there to phone up the front desk receptionist's phone number and say that he's Adam, that will probably work. So I phone up my office and say, can one of you guys pretend to be Adam, talk to this receptionist and say that you've called a BT engineer and he needs any help he can have. So he does that. I then go back into the office and I can hear her on the phone and she's talking to him, and she's completely convinced by this. So she comes over, she's got the guest book ready for me to sign in, she's got a visitor badge for me and she gives me that. So at this point I'm feeling quite confident. I've got everything I need. I've got my tools, my equipment, I've got a username and password, I've got a visitor badge, which I love having a visitor badge, because if I can get the receptionist to accept that I'm supposed to be there and give me a badge, I can then walk around the office as freely as I want, because no one's going to question me, because I'm not trying to hide in a corner. You know, sometimes as a social engineer, if you sneak in behind someone, you then feel on edge the whole time, because you think, oh, someone's going to catch me because I haven't got a valid badge. I'm not supposed to be here. If anyone questions me, I'm going to be in trouble. But with a visitor badge, you can just say, well, reception let me in, and so that you've always got something to say. So I was feeling pretty confident at this point. I was just about to go upstairs, and she said, oh no, hold on there for a minute. I'll call down our IT person to help you out. Now, this is where it starts to go wrong, because I think, oh no, that's the last thing I want, is an IT person to be sat with me while I'm hacking into their computer network, because they're going to know I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Of course they are. And also, there's no network problem. You know, I've completely made that up. So the IT person's probably going to know that. And I really didn't expect in an office of only 20 people for them to have their own dedicated IT person. So at this point, I'm thinking, oh, this isn't going to work. You know, how on earth am I going to make this work? But then I thought about it. I thought, okay, I've done about 200 different building intrusions in my career, all sorts of different places. It's only gone wrong a couple of times, and the only reason it goes wrong is when you break character. So when you start to panic and you start to look nervous, because people pick up on that, right? They see that you're looking nervous and they think something's not quite right here. So I thought, okay, what would a real BT engineer do? Wouldn't be bothered, right? He would just sit in the foyer, wait around, see what happens. If the job doesn't come off, he goes to another job. Doesn't matter. It's just his day job. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I sit in the reception. The IT guy comes down the lift, comes over to me and says, "Are you the guy from BT?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, I don't really understand why you're here. The network's working fine. I haven't heard anything from head office, so I don't really think we need you to come in." But the receptionist overhears the conversation. She steps in and says, "No, I've just spoken to Adam at head office, and he said it's absolutely fine to get this guy in straight away. We need to give him any help he needs." So he's completely convinced. He just shrugs and says, "Okay, fine. If you've spoken to Adam at head office, then that's fine with me. He's really senior. So do you want to come up in the lift with me?" So he takes me up in the lift. We go up to the top floor, and the lift door's open. And he turns around to me and says, "The weird thing is we don't even use BT here, but come in anyway." So despite the fact that they don't even use BT and I got some of the research wrong, it didn't matter. And that's why I pick BT, because at least in the UK, there's so many people dressed as BT engineers all the time. You see them on the street all the time, that you just assume that something in the walls or some wires or whatever must be owned by BT, and therefore it's not really that suspicious. So now I've been invited in the front door, invited up in the lift, and he sits me down at a desk. Now, this office that I'm in is small. I mean, it's really small. It's like just an office for 20 people, but it's crammed. It's really tight. There's people around me. The IT person sits down next to me, and he says, "What do you need to get onto the computer network?" I said, "Well, I need a cable." So he said, "Okay, just unplug it from the back of that phone." So I take the cable out, plug it into my laptop, and now I've got an internet connection and a network connection via something called DHCP that gives me a connection onto their network. And he says, "Is there anything else you need?" Now, what I really need is for him to go away so I can hack this network. So I said, "Oh, could I have a cup of coffee, please?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, that's fine." And I said, "Would you make me a cappuccino?" And he sort of frowned at me a bit and said, "Okay, I'll give it a go." So he disappears off, and I was hoping that would buy me 2 or 3 minutes. But he comes back like 30 seconds later, and he said, "Oh, yeah, there was just a button on the machine that I pressed, and it made a cappuccino. So here you go." I was like, "Oh, great." So now I've got to sit with this guy the whole time. There's no way I'm going to be able to hack the network with him sitting there. So I've got my laptop's kind of ready. So I put the BT sort of logo and everything in the background of my desktop, and I downloaded some graphs that measure Wi-Fi signal strength. So it looks like I'm doing some diagnosis on network connections and things like that. So that's just sort of going back and forth. And I watched that for about 10 minutes, and he starts to ask me what I'm doing, and I vaguely talk about network packets and things like that. And then he says, "Look, I'm really sorry, but I've got a meeting for the next hour and a half. Are you going to be okay?" And I went, yeah, you know what, I'll be absolutely fine. He said, okay, I'll just be in that meeting room over there. If you need me, just give me a wave. It's like, okay, not a problem whatsoever. So he disappears off and he leaves me on my own, which is just exactly what I wanted, because now I've got an hour and a half to myself to try and find this vaccine design. No one else in the office is paying me any attention anymore, because I came in with the IT guy, and like I said, I'm wearing the high-vis jacket. When you're high-vis jacket, no one sees you anymore. So everyone's leaving me alone. So now I can do whatever I want. But I have that username and password. Do you remember I got that from the phishing attack? The funny thing is, the password was for one of their directors, and his password was password 24. So I reckon the first day he'd got there, he'd configured his password as password 1. And then for the next 8 years, every 4 months, whatever, I had to change it. He would be password 2, password 3, password 4, password 5, which is what loads of people do. And eventually he got up to password 24, and that's when I stole it. So I logged in as him. And what I did is I logged into something called a domain controller. Now, I don't know how technical you guys are in the audience. Some of you may be going, well, obviously we know what a domain controller is, but others may not be. So essentially what a domain controller is like the central computer that controls a lot of the other computers. And when you log on to that, you're able to access some files that show where other computers are. And what it does is it maps network drives. So if someone wants to open up a P drive or an S drive or whatever, it maps those so you can see them. So I log onto that domain controller. The idea behind that is I can use that to find the file servers where this vaccine design would be stored, because it has a list of them on this server. So I log in, I have a look at this list, I find the name of several file servers, and I log into each of those in turn using the username and password that I got from that director. Now, being a director, this person had access to almost the entire network. So almost every bit of data on that network he had access to. So if I'd been a criminal, I could have dropped ransomware on there and encrypted that entire network. He even had access to backups, I think, as well. But I was able to log on as him, and I actually found the vaccine design that I was looking for. So found the zip file, they told me the file name of it so I could find it. And yeah, so I got that. And as I hoped, being in the branch office, I could access the head office. So I never needed to go anywhere near the head office to do that. So I then took that zip file, moved it across the network onto my laptop, encrypted, kept it safe. And then I was finished. So I waited around for another 20 minutes to make it look like I'd done enough work. And then I just waved to the guy in the room and said, look, I'm all done. And I disappeared off. So from my perspective, job's done. I've been able to gain access to their computer network by dressing up as a BT engineer, getting into their office, and then stole the design for this vaccine. So I'm a happy bunny. They're, as a company, they have mixed emotions. You know, they're happy that I found some weaknesses in their security, not so happy how easy it was. So lessons learned from them. So first of all, too much information revealed through social media, and this is true of most companies, because you know, when you have hundreds of employees, some of those employees are going to be big users of social media, and they're not going to have the private account option set on Instagram or on Twitter. They're going to have stuff on Facebook available, and I can use that information to find out ID badge designs, but also to design phishing attacks using information taken from their social media profiles. The training that their staff had, not good enough. You can tell that by the fact that they were using a really weak password, by the fact that they fell for the phishing attack, even though it was on the wrong domain, and by the fact that I was able to trick the receptionist into letting me into the building. So, you know, good cybersecurity awareness training should educate staff about those things and make them better. The procedures at the branch office in how the receptionist handled me weren't correct. You know, she never really truly verified who I was. She took a phone call from someone else telling her who I was, she didn't initiate the call herself. And then I was left on my own for an hour and a half, and no one challenged me after the IT guy left. They had nothing on their network able to detect strange activity. So some of the stuff I did involving the phishing attack, involving the way I moved around the network and logged into multiple servers very quickly, should have been detected. So if the company had been using a protected monitoring service, an MDR solution, managed detection and response, they would have been able to detect that and block it as it happened. And of course, weak passwords, because I already said to you, there's a director using password 24. Now, when I do these intrusions, I wear hidden cameras so I can record it all and train the staff. So rather than just me going in and telling people, you know, don't let people tailgate you through the door or whatever. I can show video evidence of me doing it. So I recorded everything I did on hidden camera. So I had a pair of glasses that I was wearing that has the camera lens in the arm, the front arm of the glasses, which means wherever I'm looking, I get video footage. So it's absolutely brilliant. So how do you protect your business? That's the question, because this was, you know, it wasn't that difficult for me to do in reality, but I've broken into many businesses that are even better secured, and it's normally the same things that occur. So how do you protect your business against this style of attack, which is exactly what criminals do? You know, I'm not doing anything hugely different to what real criminals do. So I think employee training is absolutely key, and don't rely on e-learning. So for regulatory reasons, you may have to do staff cybersecurity awareness training. The easiest way you may think to do that is to get buy-in an e-learning solution where once every 6 months or so, they run through some modules, they do a quiz, and then you get a tick in your box to say you've done your cybersecurity training. Great, except it makes almost no difference to the security of your business. So if you actually care about security, you need to approach training slightly differently. My approach and the way I think is successful is to do kind of what I've done to you today. Take someone like me into your organization, scare them, tell them how it's done, explain it from the criminal perspective, through storytelling, through anecdotes, and really get them engaged in the training. So make sure they're in the room or over video so they can experience it live, and they're not doing something else at the same time. They've really got to focus their attention on it, rather than when they do e-learning, they're not really, they're doing their email at the same time, they do the quiz and then they forget about it. E-learning's fine as a backup to live training, but not on its own. Attack detection. So it is common view within the cybersecurity industry that you will be breached at some point. You know, if someone wants to go for you, if a sufficiently advanced criminal group wants to breach your network and get to your data, they will be able to get through your defenses. However, if you use detection, then they can't move around that network and steal anything or encrypt everything with ransomware, because detection services can block it. And there's two kind of main avenues for that. The first is MDR, Managed Detection and Response, which is an outsourced security operations center. Phalanx have one in the UK, whereby everything that happens on your network essentially runs through there as well, and we check it and make sure there's anything weird going on. So a combination of AI and human analysts to do that. But also you can use EDR, which is endpoint detection and response, which is normally integrated into MDR, or can be a standalone service. You can think of this like next generation antivirus, like better than antivirus, because antivirus isn't enough, because if it was, we wouldn't see companies being hacked, because everyone has antivirus, right? EDR is the next step beyond that, and ESET have a solution called Enterprise Inspector, which is great and can detect a lot of this stuff happening on the endpoint. Run your organization through testing, like I've described in this scenario. You know, that's what that pharmaceutical company wanted to do in order for me to see if I could get access that vaccine. We did penetration testing and red team scenarios to try and break in, and then they learned lots of lessons from that, and then went back and upgraded their defenses ready for actual criminals targeting them. And then, of course, just the cybersecurity basics, right? You know, it'd be remiss of me not to mention the really basic stuff. You know, I don't have services that directly align with this, but that's not the point. Patching of systems. You know, a lot of companies are exploited because they have out-of-date computers. You know, they're running Windows Server 2003 or an out-of-date VPN on the internet. Multi-factor authentication, so that's separate code you get sent through to your mobile, or you have an app on your phone, on everything internet facing. So not just your email, not just your VPN, but what about the app that you use for HR, or your CRM system, or the content management system that manages your website? All these things, any login pages that your business has pointing to the internet should have MFA, and I almost guarantee you'll have missed some when you think it through. And long passwords, as I mentioned in that story, password 24 is obviously not a very good password. It's 10 characters. So you think, oh, it's 10 characters, it's good. 10 characters is no good nowadays. You need 14 characters or more, and there needs to be random. So what I say to use is 4 random words put together, or use a sentence rather than using a 8-10 characters of random numbers, letters and symbols. Use a passphrase or a sentence to do it. And that more or less brings me to the end of my section of the presentation. Obviously got a bit of time for questions, but I've got my contact details up there. So we work with ESET, but the company I work for is called Phalanx Cyber. You've got my email address up there. If you want to have a go at phishing me, you're more than welcome. And I have Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So yeah, please feel free to take down those details if you have any questions after the event or interested in anything that that we do. But yeah, that's the end of me for now. So I'm very happy to go over to any questions.
Rob, wow, I love that. I think you're one of my new heroes actually after hearing that. I love the fact that you have not only done it, you tell it in a very exciting way, and everyone will definitely agree with that. I love all the little things you've done. Just to quickly say to everyone, please throw your questions in. I've got a couple already there. If you've got any questions, throw them in the chat or the question box, and I'll read them out for you. But yeah, I love the fact you mentioned Password 24 on World Password Day. It still happens. I love that. Yeah, what is it? Right, they say every 4 months. Yeah, I want to add another number, and people are still doing it. So, the first question I want to ask you is: someone said, so do you think real cyber attacks are similar to your simulations?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yes. So perhaps in this story, there's more of a heavy influence on physical intrusions, breaking into the building than there is in real life. Or it does happen, but it's less common. In real life, a lot of it happens through phishing and exploiting out-of-date systems. But pretty much everything I do in my job is exactly how the criminals do it. So the methods they use, I try and copy. And make sure that I keep up to date with the current methods they're using and the ways they exploit stuff. So you may have noticed during that presentation, I really didn't speak too much about the technical side of cyber attacks because
it's all about dressing up, isn't it?
Exactly. It's much more interesting to talk about the dressing up stuff, right? If I start talking, I pressed this button and did this computer command and stuff, everyone falls asleep. So you know that's where I really do simulate what the criminals do, and I make sure that the stuff I'm doing in terms of the technical side is bang up to date with what the criminals are doing. Yeah.
Great. Well, so yeah, we hear a lot about scaring employees. I've actually heard before some people say you shouldn't scare people. And I like what you said, that you should go and scare them. Do you think that works as well these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to be honest with people about how easy it is to break into companies, that it can literally be down to their decision on whether they open up an email attachment as to whether the whole company is encrypted with ransomware and then has to pay millions of pound ransom fee. I think that's naturally scary straight away. You know, there's no point in me sugarcoating it and telling it any different than it is. That is naturally scary. It's not me necessarily trying to scare them. It just happens because you know, that's how it is. You know, okay, we have antivirus and EDR and MDR and stuff, but a lot of companies don't have all of those things. And those are layers of defense, but one of the layers is the people that work in the organization. If they don't learn this stuff, you know, it can lead to that. And, you know, if they do it in their personal life, they don't have those backups of all those things that businesses put in place. If they give their password to someone and that person logs into their online banking and steals it, then yeah, because they didn't listen to training or didn't know about phishing attacks, then that's obviously very scary. So yeah, I naturally scare people without trying, I suppose.
I guess the smiling assassin with a smiley face.
Guess to that point, Rob, then from your point of view, do you still consider the biggest threat to be the internal threat? Because I think we as people who work in cyber or around security might anecdotally say that it doesn't matter what you do from a security perspective, from a kind of a software side of things, if someone's going to do something stupid, they're going to do something stupid. Is that still kind of where you think it is as a majority for today's kind of businesses?
Yeah. Still, most of the threat comes from someone internally doing something they shouldn't do, following a link they shouldn't, opening up an attachment they shouldn't. The technology is there to try and give them a fallback if they do that. So, you know, if they open up the attachment, hopefully in most cases, the antivirus picks it up. If the antivirus fails, the EDR picks it up. If the EDR fails, the MDR picks it up. It's all about putting these layers of defense in place. And one of those layers is the employee themselves, having the knowledge and the experience to actually detect themselves that attack and go, no, hold on a minute, I'm going to report this as a phishing attack. And that blocks it in the first instance. You know, most attacks still start with someone doing something they shouldn't. So that's where we should focus our technology to help them, but also our education to help them as well.
Good. Well, we've got more questions coming in. Next one. Have you ever been able to physically access a data center?
Oh, great question. Data centers are really difficult. Probably the most difficult target that I've done has been data centers. That includes military places. I've broken into military places easier than I've broken into data centers. Well, I've got into one data center, and I did it by organizing a tour of the building. So I've tended to be a prospective customer, and we went in with about 4 of us, and basically what we did is one person faked having a toilet emergency and ran off and managed to sort of hide themselves and get onto a system. Now, there was problems with that data center security. That wasn't the best one I've seen by a long way, which allowed us to, first of all, get away from that tour, and secondly, still manage to get onto a computer system. The vast majority of data centers that I've seen are too secure for that to work. And within the budget that I'm often set for the test, I can't come up with scenarios that will work. So I often say I just can't do that for the budget that you've set. I think data centers are the hardest target that I've come up against so far. So yeah, generally speaking, they're really good security wise.
You must have a talk for every pen test you've ever done. I mean, we could get you back another 199 times. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, you would think that, but probably 150 of those I waited outside a door and then followed someone through when they came back from lunch, and then sat in a
I'm still excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, that story's not so good, and it doesn't last 45 minutes. So yeah, most of them are like that, honestly. Like most, if you break into an office in London or something, you know, it's simple. In most cases, it's simple. You just follow someone through a door, which doesn't make.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I hear it's about the confidence. I can imagine you just go to, like you say, with a high vis jacket on or something like that. I think the term hidden in plain sight is what I've read, and I can just imagine you doing that. Exactly, it's like, oh god, it's just another high vis jacket. Just do what you want. I love it. You must feel like you're in a movie all the time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you wanted to get into social engineering, best thing you could buy would be a high vis jacket and a ladder and just walk in places. With no training.
Right, we got another question. Is a password manager like LastPass any good?
Yes, I'm fine with you using password managers like LastPass. So when I do cybersecurity training, obviously I cover passwords and how to remember passwords and things like that. And in that training, I don't actually directly advise using password managers. And the only reason is because there's been one or two of them that have been hacked into, and the password hashes have been revealed. And of course, if I was going to go into every training session I'd done and say, oh, I recommend you use LastPass, and then LastPass got hacked, I'd have tens of thousands of people emailing me going, why the hell did you tell me to use that thing? So when I did training, I recommend a memory-based system where you have a few passphrases, maybe 5, that you focus on the really important websites that you use. So the stuff that stores information that would actually affect your life if it was stolen, like online banking and social media profiles, things like that. And then you have one that you share across all the pointless websites that ask you to log in but doesn't have anything sensitive about yourself. However, saying that, if you do already use a password manager, I don't have a problem with it because it's much better than having the same password across every website. So yeah, continue to use it if you are using LastPass, absolutely.
Good, nice. Okay, we got another one here. What were the outcomes after you presented your findings to them, and did they do specific training with the different staff off the back of this?
Really good question. So in this company, they were really good. In other companies, I've sent them the report and I've never heard from them again. They've kind of buried it and put their head in the sand and pretended it never happened because it was too scary. This company took the opposite approach, which is a much better way of doing it. And they took all the findings. They got me to present to their board. So I went straight to their board of directors, presented everything that I did, walked them through the videos of me breaking in, how I planned it. Basically did an expanded version of what I've just done for you guys with more sensitive information, of course. They then asked me to cascade that training down to the rest of their employees. So I did specific training for security guards and receptionists, and then did general training for all their staff on phishing, passwords, social engineering, all that sort of stuff. And then they did some technical upgrades. So they changed their password policy. They had some outdated systems which they upgraded. They put some different email defense in place. They also put in place Phalanx's MDR solution as well, the one I talked about earlier, managed detection and response. So yeah, they were one of the best companies in terms of who I've worked with, who actually took the advice I gave them and then invested to make it better. And now they're much better security wise. You know, we go back and test them every year or two, and they're really good now. So it's a pleasure for me to work with a company that actually listens to what we say and does those upgrades. Because a lot of them don't have to cost anything. You know, it doesn't cost much to change your password policy. You know, and that has a huge difference to security.
Good. Oh, it's nice to know that they do listen and act upon that advice. So we've got a couple more questions still coming through. One just says, hey, fantastic webinar. Is there any chance of a recording of this? If you're okay with us sharing this with a few of our partners, if you're okay with that. Are we still there?
I'm still here, Jake.
Have we lost Rob?
Potentially.
Maybe he's really not happy with us sharing his webinar.
This is why I see him walking through the office right now in a high vis.
Right behind you, with his high vis jacket and his ladder, just walking on through. Hi, guys. Well, should we answer it for him? Yes, of course, he doesn't mind. Yeah, we'll share it with you. Thanks, John, for asking that. I have got one last question for him. I was really hoping to get this answer. We have lost him. He's gone. Okay.
He might come back. We'll give him the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, this is where we would normally thank him, but clearly he doesn't. He's a busy man, and he's got some more hacking to do, and maybe to go and buy a new high-vis jacket and a new printer to put another logo on the back. But anyway, I want to also thank everyone here today for coming along to this webinar. I personally loved it, and I was hoping Rob would hear that. I genuinely loved his story, and we have got more like this, hopefully as good, coming up. We're going to try and do these every month, but don't hold me to that. That's what we're really going to try and do for the rest of this year. So keep a lookout for your emails, in your emails for all these webinars, and hopefully we will see you all soon. I'm going to stay here for the next couple of minutes just in case Rob does come back online, but I'm not going to take any offense if he doesn't.
Oh, I so don't want him to turn up now, Jake, and you're like waiting 15 minutes later.
Rob, come back. Right, we're having some lovely messages coming through. So excellent session, thank you. Great, thank you. He was hacked. I really hope he wasn't. I thought someone would say that. Someone said, Brill, I'd love a recording. Maybe that's what tipped him over the edge. He really didn't want to get this recording out there. He was like pressing the self-delete button so we wouldn't be able to get a copy of it. But hey, I'm sorry, Rob, but we got a copy already. So great session. Thank you. Oh, this is lovely. Really good interaction. Yeah, I mean that to everyone watching. Thanks so much. We couldn't do this without you. And so that is it. You know what? I'm going to cut the session short. He's not coming back. So Nathan, thanks for being on side with me and laughing at the right times. And thanks
I'll
for everyone
expect the money in the bank shortly, Jake. Yeah.
Absolutely. Big special thanks goes out to Amy and Lewis, who you never see, by the way. There are two amazing people who do all that stuff to make you hear. They're called Amy Parker and Lewis Magendi. Really lovely people. And I just want to say a special thanks to them as well. They don't normally get a round of applause. So there you go. Thank you. Right. Please look out for this recording. We're going to be sending it out to you and hope to see you all very soon. Where's the off button? There we go.
He only works for a cyber company.
Oh, yeah, there we go.